What's up, everybody? Nick Whalen here from RotoWire. Last week, we took a look at some of my favorite values at the running back position. We're doing the same thing this time with wide receivers. My favorite values, the most undervalued wide receivers right now in fantasy football. We start in Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin, baby. Wide receiver 31 right now over at the NFFC. As you may remember, he was tracking toward being a top 5 wide receiver last season, even if you thought he was going to decline as the year went along. I mean, we're talking top 10, top 15 at worst. I mean, he was the wide receiver 2 through the first 7 weeks of the season at the time of that devastating ankle injury. Started the year with 2 huge games, had just come off a 36 fantasy point game in week 6. Now, there's a reason he's going as late as he is. The injury is daunting, but it was an ankle dislocation as opposed to a tendon tear, something like that. To be very clear, I am not a doctor, but I have less concern about an injury like this that requires, fairly straightforward surgery as opposed to a torn ACL, a torn Achilles, the type of injuries that tend to hurt veteran wide receivers. Beyond that, yes, the Buccaneers lost Liam Cohen. We'll see what kind of ripple effects end up happening in Tampa Bay, but the Bucs bring back all of their key pieces from what was an elite offense last season, including Baker Mayfield coming off of a career year. They did add even more depth to that wide receiver room. You bring in Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I look at Egbuka, I look at Jalen McMillan even as more so future pieces, kind of the future successors to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. It doesn't worry me so much about Chris Godwin's 2025 upside. If anything, I would worry maybe a little bit more about Mike Evans. He's on the wrong side of 30. Do we fully trust him to stay healthy? Overall, I get the concerns with Chris Godwin, but wide receiver 31 to me is just way too much of a drop. We're talking 6th round. He's gone as late as the 70s, even the early 80s in some NFFC drafts in the last month. Ultimately, I think the injury discount has just gotten a little too steep right now for a guy with as much upside as Chris Godwin has shown throughout his career, and particularly over the first half of last season. I mean, we're talking same ADP essentially as Rome Odunze, Jalen Waddle, the same range as Jerry Jeudy, Ted McMillan, almost a full round behind Jameson Williams. Give me Chris Godwin over all of those guys. Before we get to the rest of our wide receiver sleepers, please, if you're watching this video, take a moment to give it a like, make sure you're subscribed to our channel, and go check out rotowire.com. Put in the promo code YouTube15. That'll get you access to everything on our site. You'll get a 15% discount off of any subscription. You get access to projections, all of our rankings, dynasty content, the RotoWire picks and props app. So much to take advantage of over at rotowire.com. Just use that code YouTube15. All right, the next receiver on our list, we're going to Indy, Josh Downs. And look, normally I like to stay away from shaky quarterback situations. And yes, Indy is among the shakiest in the NFL right now, but I'm betting on the talent with Josh Downs. And it's not like the Colts quarterback situation was in excellent shape last year or in 2023 when he was catching passes from rookie Anthony Richardson for 3.5 games and then Gardner Minshew. Downs put up 771 yards on 68 catches as a rookie, followed up with 72 catches for 803 yards, 5 touchdowns a year ago. Did that in just 14 games, missed the first 2 games of the year, and then sat out week 13 against New England. Now, we may want to downgrade Josh Downs and really the entire Colts wide receiver room for the turmoil at quarterback. I get it. If you look at the ADPs, that's exactly what's happening. But the discount, again, is to the point where I'm happy to invest. I mean, we're talking about post-pick 100 right now in the NFFC. He's the wide receiver 46, just ahead of his teammate Michael Pittman, who we were taking in late 2nd, early 3rd round last year. So that puts him behind guys like Cooper Kupp, a full round or 2 behind Ricky Pearsall, Deebo Samuel. I get it, but I think there's just as much, if not more, upside with Josh Downs than any of the players I just mentioned. You look under the hood, I love some of the advanced numbers for Josh Downs. 22% team target share last year. That's top 25 in the NFL. 2.3 yards per route run. Not ultra elite, but like that target share number, puts him in really good company when you look at some of the other names who are in that range. There is some risk, no question. There's going to be risk with all these players that we're talking about, but who knows how the Colts QB room is going to shake out. I think we see more Daniel Jones than we do Anthony Richardson, and to me, Daniel Jones is a better fit for Downs' skill set. There's a higher floor week to week with Daniel Jones. He can work the middle, he can operate in space, he can rack up those targets. There may not be a massive ceiling, certainly in terms of touchdown potential, but again, I'm betting on the talent of Josh Downs winning out, taking advantage of the opportunity right now in Indianapolis. In the 9th round, you're just not going to find significantly more upside at wide receiver. So give me some Josh Downs. Next up, I want to talk about Jayden Reed of the Green Bay Packers. So just talked about, Josh Downs going wide receiver 46. Jayden Reed, not too much further ahead right now in ADP. He is your wide receiver 43 at the NFFC. And no doubt last year was a strange one for Jayden Reed. Early on, he looked like one of the biggest steals in just about any fantasy draft. Through 9 games, he was the wide receiver 10 in the NFL. Huge game to open the year in Brazil against Philly. Had another big game and that crazy near comeback against Minnesota. Topped 100 yards against Detroit in week 9. After that, pretty much an abject disaster. You're just waiting and waiting for early season Jayden Reed to show back up. And really, it never happened. He was not targeted more than 6 times in any of his final 9 games. That includes the wild card game against Philly. Essentially topped out at 3 for 76 in a blowout win over New Orleans in week 16. From week 9 onward, after being the wide receiver 10, he was your wide receiver 52 the rest of the way. Now, I don't think Jayden Reed got worse as the year went along. I don't think he hit some sort of sophomore wall, if that even exists. Maybe some things did break his way in terms of big plays, especially early in the season. I will admit that. But really the biggest change was the way the Packers offense operated entirely. Jordan Love was banged up on and off. The Packers turned into this extreme run-heavy team behind Josh Jacobs. They were running fewer plays overall. Love was only attempting 23 passes per game over the final 8 games of the regular season. You compare that to 34 attempts per game over the first half. As a result, the big plays dried up, the targets dried up, and not just for Jayden Reed, for pretty much everybody involved in that passing game. It's not like someone else was going off every week while Jayden Reed sat on the sidelines. The run-heavy approach, it may have been enough for Green Bay to beat some bad teams. They took care of business for the most part down the stretch in the regular season, but if you're Green Bay, you're looking at yourself in the mirror and saying that we know we have to get back to a more aggressive passing game this season if we want to have, higher than a wild card losing team floor. And a bet on Jayden Reed to me is a bet that this passing game will improve. You add Matthew Golden to the mix. I think he essentially fills the Christian Watson role for this season. Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft. These are nice supplementary pieces. But if there's a guy in this offense who's proven that he has the upside to be, a top 25 fantasy receiver, to me, it's Jayden Reed. He has the talent I want in that wide receiving core. And right now, we're talking about a round 8 investment for a guy who is essentially looking like a 2nd or 3rd round value for half of last season. It certainly requires a leap of faith in Jordan Love, some faith in Matt LaFleur and the Packers passing game overall. But again, at close to pick 100, that is a risk I'm willing to take. All right, next up, we are going out to Vegas. Jakobi Meyers. Obviously, my guy, Jakobi Meyers, is going to be on this list. We're going down that same road yet again. He exceeds expectations with bad quarterback play, and yet we still undervalue him a year later. Jakobi Meyers is going as the wide receiver 39 right now at the NFFC, and that's after finishing as the wide receiver 19 a year ago, despite missing 2 games, by the way. In 2023, he was a wide receiver 24. In 2022, he was a wide receiver 29. He was also wide receiver 29 in 2021. So that is a 4-year track record of top 30 finishes with Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi as his starting quarterbacks. Truly a remarkable achievement, if we're being realistic, for Jakobi Meyers. So looking at this season, now in steps Geno Smith, better quarterback play, we would think, but maybe we do see lower volume in that Raiders offense. Vegas was 4th in the NFL in pass attempts last season, and if you watched any Raiders football, it's pretty easy to see why that was the case. For one, they were constantly playing from behind. 2, they were a brutal running team. But I think that should improve. You got Ashton Genty in place. You got Pete Carroll bringing some stability at head coach. But I'm not ready to say that this is going to completely flip and become some crazy run-heavy scheme. Pete Carroll still threw the ball at about a league average frequency over his final 2 years in Seattle. Obviously, he's plenty familiar with Geno Smith from his time in Seattle. And beyond that, there's still very little competition to be in that wide receiver core in Vegas. Yeah, Brock Bowers, of course, but Meyers was still plenty productive. Top 20 wide receiver season, while Bowers had an all-time great rookie year in 2024. You bring in Jack Bech, you bring in Dante Thornton in the draft. We'll see on both of those guys. I like the idea of just bringing in talent, but I don't necessarily see either of those guys as a direct threat to Jakobi Meyers. Now, is he going to be trending toward another 140 target season? Probably not, but I'd like to think the efficiency on those targets will be better. He'll still generate big plays. He had 20 catches last season that went for at least 20 yards. That was more than Jamar Chase, more than Drake London, more than Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, JSN. The list goes on. And with competent quarterback play, that's really the big sell here. Jakobi Meyers has been doing this for years with some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL. We now have some semblance of competency in Geno Smith. I think there's more touchdown upside for Jakobi Meyers. Only found the end zone 4 times last season, and 2 of those came in week 17 and week 18. Only had 14 targets in the red zone. even if you think that volume does decrease, and look, I could subscribe to that, I think we'll be looking at higher quality fantasy targets for Jakobi Meyers next year. We're still undervaluing him. If you're giving me this ADP right now, wide receiver 39, I will happily take that. All right, real quickly, I want to hit a few more names before we head out. Got two more for you. Rashod Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens, wide receiver 58 right now at the NFFC. Look, I loved Rashod Bateman coming out of Minnesota. Hadn't really delivered on that promise until last season, and did just sign an extension. Ravens rewarded him for that production. I think it's fair, though, to look at last season as somewhat of a best-case scenario. 9 touchdowns on 45 catches, a couple low-target splash games that probably won't be replicable year over year. But keep in mind, Bateman's still only 25 years old. The Ravens' offense is one of the best in the NFL. He's going to continue to be put in great situations. Now, is Lamar Jackson throwing 40-plus touchdowns again? Perhaps not. But even if you do forecast some level of touchdown regression for Lamar, I still think Bateman is a really nice value right now, around pick 150. And no, the addition of DeAndre Hopkins does not move the needle for me. We'll finish out with one more name, Keon Coleman of the Buffalo Bills. This is another guy where it's really more about betting on the talent, betting on the level of investment that the Bills have in him, the 33rd overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. Coleman showed some flashes as a rookie, but did really feel like a virtual non-factor down the stretch. He missed some games with an injury and then caught just 10 of his final 29 targets late in the year and into the postseason. But the idea is that in the long term, Keon Coleman turns in to the Bills' go-to wide receiver. Didn't happen in year one. I think we'll take some steps toward that in year two. Khalil Shakir, really nice player, Bills' leading receiver last season, but other than that, there's not a whole lot of name value in the Bills wide receiver room right now. They're rolling the dice on Josh Palmer. You still have Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel. I'm just not excited necessarily about any of those names. The bottom line is there's real opportunity in Buffalo, playing with an MVP quarterback in Josh Allen. The Bills successfully spread the ball around to a ton of different pass catchers last season, but ideally, I think you condense that a little bit more. And the expectation, of course, is that Keon Coleman would shoulder a heavier load in year two. I'll admit it could go either way, but at the end of the day, I want to bet on a player with Coleman's size, his talent, the draft capital invested, playing in what should be, again, one of the highest upside, highest scoring offenses in the NFL.